What is going on YouTube? It's your boy Spanko, and today I'm back with another video. And in today's video we're going to be talking about something that I think is important to know, and that is the top 5 best deck predictions, I should say, because I'm not going to say this for sure, but this is what I predict to be the best top 5 decks in the metagame in the format post Lightning Overdrive. And I say that because Lightning Overdrive does some big things for some big decks, and I think it changes up the meta a decent amount. Alright, so if you guys do like these videos, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Yu-Gi-Oh content. And I'm excited for this one, because although this is a predictions list, and although this is not something that is going to be 100% accurate, not like, oh, this is what I say and this is final, whatever, but it's going to be one of those things where I think it reintroduces some decks back into the format, and it helps some decks that are already meta right now and in the format get even stronger. One of my favorite decks, of course, being one of them. I'm not gonna say it just yet. You guys might know if you guys do watch the channel regularly, but let's get into the video. Alright, so we're starting off with deck number 5, and I think that is going to be Drytron. People are sleeping on the support that the deck got. The new Diviner and the Fafnir are really good support cards for the deck. No, it doesn't make the deck super broken just yet. However, I think this deck is going to be a contender now. Again, with Ben 10 still being legal, I know it's not at 3, it's at 1 though, and it being at 1 still means that you can still do some crazy stuff with the deck. And even before Fafnir and even before the Herald or the Diviner, the deck could do some pretty cool things, but now it's just consistency is way better because of those 2 new cards. So, I think at number 5, Drytron is definitely going to be a top 5 meta contender. I know you guys are going to be like, oh, that's so weird, like why Drytron, Union Hangers banned, but not Union Hanger, I should say, Union Carriers banned, but no, like, I think Drytron low-key, if people can play this deck right, is going to be one of the top 5 decks in the format. And another thing with Drytron that I should mention is that they can still play through hand traps. People sleep on how good they are playing through hand traps. Also, they don't lose to a lot of the hand traps that the other decks on the list that I'm going to mention lose to in today's metagame. So that's another thing I want to mention, is it's because they don't lose to the stuff that the other meta decks lose to that I think they could be relevant. So at number 4, I'm going to say one deck that I guess has 2 to 3 versions of it, although it pretty much functions and runs in the same way, and that is Shaddoll and the Shaddoll variant. So Shaddoll Dogmatica, Shaddoll Dogmatica Invoked, or whether it's just Shaddoll Invoked. I think that at number 4 is going to be where it's at, because I think that deck right now is relevant and right now is meta. But again, the format hasn't changed too much where the deck falls out of the meta. It also does some really cool things well. It has some really good matchups against something like Tri-Brigade, and that's why I think that deck is still going to be relevant. And again, the reason I have that at number 4 is, again, because I don't think this deck got better with Lightning Overdrive. However, obviously it didn't get worse, and nothing in the other decks really got better to the point where they beat it. So I think number 4 is actually a really solid spot for the Shaddoll and Shaddoll variants, because again, it's just where it's at right now in the metagame. It's not, I don't think, a top 3 deck, but again, it is one of the top 4 or 5 decks in the format. And you can argue with the top 3 decks that I'm just going to get into right now, but just before I do, I want to say the Shaddoll deck, what it does really well is, again, it doesn't lose to what other decks lose to per se, but the thing that it does really well is it actually beats a lot of the meta decks. It has a little bit of like anti-meta kind of feeling to Shaddoll, you know what I mean? Just having the Winda on the board. Winda is obviously a very strong card, and that's why I still think at number 4 spot it is where it should be. Now I should say you can argue it to be number 3 on this list, which I should say the reason I didn't put it at number 3 is because I feel like people are going to forget about this deck at number 3. But the thing Shaddoll does really well, again, is just it being able to beat the meta and having really good matchups. The thing that it doesn't do well though is it bricks a lot. And it just inherently it bricks, and that's why I don't have it higher on the list. Now number 3 on the list is Dragon Link, and this happens every single time. What happens is the ban list drops, something happens, Dragon Link gets hyped for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, and then people just forget about it. And I think it's because people get tired of it and people don't want to play it anymore. But I'm going to be completely honest with you, this deck can still do what the deck has always been able to do. It puts up negates, it can play through hand traps, still has all its extenders. Dragons in general are just so crazy strong, and I feel like, again, people are just not playing it because of the way that, you know, it's always happened in the format where, again, it gets hyped, a lot of people play it, a lot of people get tired of it, and then they stop playing it. But I still think Dragon Link is still one of the best decks in the format, and I'm telling you, it's a top 3 deck. Now you could argue, again, the Shaddoll versus a Dragon Link thing, you could argue Shaddoll to be number 3, but again, the thing that Dragon Link does really well is that 1, it's a 1-card combo through everything. 2, it can fit hand traps because, again, everything is 1-card combo, so you can fit hand traps into the main deck. And then on top of that, even through hand traps, it can make boards. Like, let me be honest with you. I was testing the other day, and my opponent played through both a Nibiru and an Ash. Now I understand Ash is not the most like broken hand trap in the game or anything, or it doesn't like stop anything, but like Ash and a Nibiru, and it still made Savage and Seal. Like, that's kind of broken if you think about it. So the fact that they can make boards through important and relevant hand traps, I think that's why it's a top 3 deck. And again, it rarely bricks. Like, how do you brick in 1-card combos? You open 1 Dragon Monster, you pretty much have combo anyways. I know that might be an exaggeration, but you know what I mean? Like, especially if you open something like a Chamber Dragon Maid or just an Extender or whatever, like, you're gonna have combo. So I think Dragon Link deserves to be the number 3 spot. Again, I don't feel like it's gonna get as much play anymore because I feel like people are tired of it, people don't want to see it anymore, and the people who do play it are just kind of like, I want something new to play. So I think that's the reason why you don't see it as much anymore, but I do think it's definitely a top 3 deck in the game. Now at number 2, oh, I'm excited for this one. I'm excited for this one, but I gotta keep it real. At number 2, I think Dino is going to be one of the best decks in the format. Scrap Raptor just came out in Lightning Overdrive, and this is what I mean by it being super relevant now. Now, Lightning Overdrive, again, like I said, at number 5, we gave it to Drytron because the new support make Drytron really consistent. It gives a lot of power to the deck, and now with Dinos, it boosts Dinos to the point where you literally can make 6 to 7 negates or disruptions in 1 turn with Dino just because of that Scrap Raptor card. Now the reason I don't have it at number 1 is because Dino does have, again, its inherent flaws. It does lose to Lancia pretty hard, it loses to a lot of hand traps, it loses to Droll, and again, that's why I don't want to put it at the number 1 spots, because again, it does lose to certain things. However, the nice thing about Dino is the Scrap engine itself is only 4 cards in the main deck, and then the Dino engine is just a Dino engine, so you can still afford to play hand traps in the main deck. You can still afford to play stuff in the main deck that helps you with your strategy outside of just the Dinos and the Scrap stuff. So that's why I think Dino's number 2 is a very fair spot for it, because now it can go first and make broken boards, and you're still playing Dino. Which means if you're going second, you can still summon Big Boy Tyranno and boom, you can still OTK your opponent out of nowhere. So that's why I think this deck is actually number 2, because I think this is the perfect deck when it comes to being able to go first and go second and still be able to flat out beat your opponent. Going first, you just put up way too many negates, it's very hard to play through. I'm gonna be honest, it's almost impossible to play through. And going second, you're just gonna summon big dinosaur monster OTK them, right? Like, that's why I think Dinosaur with Lightning Overdrive, with the introduction of Scrap Raptor, actually breaks his deck. It actually makes his deck bannable. Like, there's stuff that in this deck that could be banned because of this. So I actually think Dino at number 2 is one of the, it's a very fair spot. And you're gonna see number 1 spot, and once you guys see the number 1 spot or hear the number 1 spot, you'll understand why I don't have it at number 1. But I think Dino at number 2 makes perfect sense. And I'm excited because as a Dino player myself, we're going to take this deck to the top, boys. I'm telling you, we're going to take this deck to the top. But at number 1, before we get into number 1, I'm going to give some honorable mentions, and my honorable mentions are going to go to both Eldritch and Orcust. Now, Scrap Raptor also gave a big boost to Orcust, but again, without Harp Horror, the deck just loses to too many things, man. I'm going to be honest with you. So I don't want to put Orcust in the top 5. You could argue Orcust and Drytron could be like, you know, 4, like 5, 6 kind of thing, but I don't want to put Orcust in the top 5. So the thing is, again, Orcust is a really good deck, just doesn't do too much, I don't think, with a Harp Horror. It doesn't get you to where you want to be, lose to a lot of hand traps. Like, the deck hard loses to a lot of hand traps. I should just mention, like, Dino still does lose to a lot of hand traps, and a lot of these decks in the format do lose to hand traps, of course, but just Orcust is one of those things where I just don't think it has enough extenders. I don't think it has enough things to play through those hand traps, and again, why I didn't want to put it at top 5. And Eldritch, again, being a trap decks I just don't think are really that great right now in this format, except for, actually, funny enough, the number 1 spot. But the number 1 spot is more of like a combo deck with that plays traps, whereas Eldritch is just like a heavy trap deck, and they're just, you know, it's too slow for today's format. So I would say if you wanted to give a 6 and a 7, I would put 6 Orcust, 7 Eldritch, but again, Eldritch and Orcust are going to get my honorable mentions. But for number 1 slot, you guys are probably going to know what this is already, but it's Tri-Brigade. I'm going to be honest, I think Tri-Brigade is going to be the best deck in the format, hands down, no questions asked. The new Link 2 monster gives a lot of consistency to the deck, gives a lot of ability for the deck to do things that it couldn't already do. Actually, it can already do them, but gives them a lot more consistency to do those kind of things, especially with the Tri-Brigade Zoo variant. So the thing is with Tri-Brigade, I'm going to mention both the Pure variant and the Zoo variant. I think both those variants are insanely broken. I actually think they're better than the Bird Up variants. Sorry for all the Bird Up players, but I actually think the Zoo variant and the regular variant, just with a bunch of traps, are the better variants. And again, because one card gets you to a statue, like the Wind statue, one card gets you to through full combo, you can set up a bunch of traps, so it's like a combo deck that can play traps, and that's why I think it was really good. And it can also play hand traps, so that's why I think Tri-Brigade already is one of the best decks in the format right now before Lightning Overdrive. Post Lightning Overdrive, I think that Link 2 monster just pushes them over the edge and gets them to that number 1 spot. So that does it for my top 5 meta decks post Lightning Overdrive. Now I know this is just a predictions video. Again, if in the comment section you guys have differing opinions, let me know. I love to hear you guys' suggestions. suggestions and you guys' thoughts and you guys' opinions. However, I do want to say that, like, again, this is just a prediction. This obviously hasn't happened yet. Lightning Overdrive isn't officially released until June 4th, which I'm super excited for because we're taking Dino to the moon, boys. Dino to the moon! But I'm just saying that I think these are going to be the top 5 decks. Again, Orcus and Eldritch still valuable decks. Shaddoll, I think, is where it's supposed to be. Dragon Link, again, is going to be one of those decks that's not going to see a lot of play because I feel like people just don't want to play it anymore. But I think it's going to be one of the best decks in the game. The deck is still insanely consistent. Dino and Tri-Brigade post-Lightning Overdrive, I think, are going to be the top 2 decks of the format. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you guys. And with that, Spanko signing out. Peace!